I'm Susan Rush with the Council on Aging in Union County, and I am their Family Caregiver Support Specialist. That's a mouthful. Basically, I'm a social worker and a dementia practitioner, and I also have some personal experience caring for both my dad, who had young onset Alzheimer's before it was called young onset. Back then it was early onset many years ago, back in the 90s, and more recently caring for my mother, who had several chronic illnesses along with dementia. So I only say that to say it's important for me for people to know I get it. You know, I'm not just speaking from book smarts or training. I think when you live it, especially when you live it long-term 24/7, you have a deeper appreciation of those of you who are caregivers and you're in the thick of it. So not that any two journeys are the same, but I'm hoping today what I can share is some tips of how to make the most of the holidays. Because I know for me, Christmas especially, all the holidays, but especially Christmas, the years that my dad just had Alzheimer's, it was challenging, you know, and depending on the stage, when I was thinking about preparing for this, it's kind of difficult because how we prepared in the earliest stages for Christmas was much different than that last stage when he was on hospice, obviously, and I can't speak to all of that, but just generally going to give some ideas of how we can maybe shift our focus and prioritize and make the best of the holiday so that we can still find joy and, you know, appreciate our family during this time. So I think the first thing we have to do is ask ourselves, what does Christmas mean to me? And, you know, for some of us, it's a very spiritual or religious holiday, celebrating a Savior that was born. For others, it's more about gift giving and the excitement of picking out that perfect present and wrapping pretty gifts, decorating the house, the lights. I mean, we get it. We know the whole American holiday festivities with church cantatas and Christmas villages set up everywhere, all of that. And it may be hard to realize, okay, there's so much I can't do. So what we want to do is change our focus and think about, okay, what can we do? And in doing that, what does Christmas really mean to you, like I said? But even though all of us may have different traditions at Christmas, I think most of us really want to spend time with our closest family and friends. And in doing that, if that's going to be you, and I want to speak a few minutes for those people who might be in social gatherings with family and friends, and then a few minutes with those who may be staying at home with their loved one, and it's going to be a more quiet Christmas. So if you're going to be going out to a larger gathering, a few things that I think might be helpful that I found really saved us. And one of those is, I truly encourage you to prepare the people that you will be seeing. Even if they just saw your loved one a few months ago, there may be significant changes. And certainly if they haven't seen them, you know, since pre-COVID, which for some of us, for a lot of us, that's the case, you definitely want them to let them know, you know, what your loved one's deficits are, how they've changed, how they may interact differently, so that they're not surprised. And depending on the number of people, honestly, even if it's going to be a handful of people, if your person with dementia is at a place to where they're having a hard time, I have a hard time recalling names, so I think this could probably help everybody, but just suggesting little festive name tags. But for your person with dementia, maybe adding underneath it family friend or Aunt Susan or whatever, just to kind of cue them. Because I can tell you at our Next Door Day program, when I go over there, I'm amazed at our folks over there with dementia who will often say, well, hey there, and then I see them, and I don't have my name tag on right now, but they will look at my name tag, and I can just tell it makes them feel better when they can call me by name. So just a thought there to suggest that family and friends wear name tags, and that will also cue them to where your person is in this process. Because what I have also found is that some people who aren't with your loved one on a daily basis and just maybe run into them at the grocery store or out and about, they may think that they're really okay. I had a lot of people telling me that because my dad's journey was very long, and it kind of frustrated me when I would see somebody in the grocery store. My dad would respond fairly appropriately, and then I would get the call, well, Susan, I thought your dad was bad. He seems normal, and it's as though they thought I was embellishing. But what they don't realize, and you might could share with your loved ones to prevent that, is that the center of the brain that controls rhythmic speech and music, both of those things, it stays intact far longer than any other center of the brain. So that's why people, even in the last stages of dementia, can still appreciate music. Some people who aren't able to speak can remember the words of music and sing. It's amazing to me, and they can keep rhythm. But some people don't realize that the rhythmic of speech also stays intact. So someone who may not know what they had for breakfast, they don't know where they live, they don't know this person they're with is their wife. You come up and say, hey, how are you? They'll say, oh, I'm doing fine. How are you? Or yes, it's a nice day. It's kind of that, what we call exchanging pleasantries of the day has a rhythmic of speech, and so they retain that. And that's why when somebody comes up to your loved one and says, oh, Merry Christmas, they might say, oh, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, because that's ingrained. And then they might walk away saying, wow, they seem to know me. They seemed appropriate. So just prepare people, that they may seem like they are much more aware and cognizant than they are. And I'm not saying that in any way that, we want people to feel like our loved one is not well. But the reason for that is we also don't want them to put our loved one on the spot with asking questions. Because sometimes if someone in that initial exchange, exchange those normal greetings, then they might start asking questions like, oh, how has so-and-so been? Or what did you do yesterday? Or do you enjoy this? And then your person may feel like they've been put on the spot. So I would also, when you're kind of calling those folks and just giving them an update on your person, and I know everybody may be at very different stages, but just let them know that very seldom is it a good idea to ask someone with dementia concrete questions, especially in recent times, because we know the long-term stays intact much longer. But just encourage them, and I know people forget. I forget sometimes because it's normal to ask questions. But, certainly, hey, how are you? But past that, encourage your folks that will be with your loved one to make affirmative statements. Wow, it's a beautiful Christmas season. Wow, I'm glad I got to see you. Hey, did you know that so-and-so did this? And did you just share information and not ask questions? And maybe you could even do it in an email and send it to multiple people and get a dialogue started. But just make sure people are prepared, because what we don't want is somebody to come in to a Christmas party or family dinner and just be shocked. And that can just change the whole tone of the environment when we someone is just, the grief hits them that, oh my goodness, this isn't the person, that I remember a couple of years ago. Another thing to think about is what time, if you're going out, whether it's to a church event or a friend's house or having people into your home, however you're going to celebrate, think about your person's circadian rhythm, because we know, and circadian rhythm is just that normal wake-sleep cycle. Well, with dementia, that gets really screwed up. And some of you may know, depending on what stage your person is in, that sometimes they're up a lot at night. Of course, a lot of us are familiar with sundowning, and knowing what time is their peak time and good time. Because if you were used to having a really big holiday dinner and your person is sundowning, or they're not their best late afternoon and definitely not early evening, you may decide to have a Christmas breakfast and or brunch or whatever. But just keep in mind, you want to celebrate when that person is absolutely at their best. Another thing to consider, especially if there's going to be multiple people that they're not accustomed to being around or may have forgotten, is not to expect or even encourage them to socialize. I see that a lot, and I know the intentions are good. You want your person, hey, say hey to them or come talk to them. Don't expect them to participate, and just know that even if they're just sitting there observing, that could be very enjoyable for them. I have a couple participants at our next door day respite program, and sometimes I'm so sad because they're doing a fun craft or music, and I have two little ladies that I'll go over and say, don't you want to do this? And I only ask once, and one of them always says, no, I really enjoy watching. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So just know, don't place your expectations of how you would enjoy interacting and enjoying your family that they would need to do that as well. Just if they're there and they're content, that may need to be enough this year. I also wanted to speak for a few minutes on just quiet time at home, whether that's how you're going to spend the bulk of your holiday, or maybe you're going to get out some, but then just what do you do with them when you're at home? And one thing, of course, we all know Zoom meetings are huge. You can do that to bring family in if you're not able to get out. FaceTime, oh my goodness, there's so many different apps just to video chat. And that can help you combat loneliness if this is going to be a season when you're just not able to get out as much. Another thing, and I know I say this about, I don't know any circumstances this is not a good idea. So I say it a lot. Reminisce, reminisce, reminisce. And when that person can no longer remember, we remember for them. So bring out those old photo albums, especially if you have some Christmas past albums or pictures, candid shots under the Christmas tree or whatever. And for me, that was therapeutic for me as a caregiver, even long after my dad could even really look at the pictures and those last couple of Christmases. Just still talking to him as though he was there, because we don't know what they can hear even when they're not responsive. But it warmed my heart to remember all of those happy Christmases, even though that was, not the best Christmas. We were still able to find joy in that. So definitely reminisce. Another thing, if you have traditions like baking, wrapping presents, okay, I'm going to teach you from my failure, because with my dad, I was going to wrap Christmas presents, and I was wrapping them, putting them under the tree, and then I turned around, I heard the ripping, and he had gotten the presents and was unwrapping them, and then I was just so frustrated. You know how it is. You shouldn't be frustrated. They can't help it, but in that moment, it's like, oh my goodness, you tore all the ribbon. And in hindsight, you know what I wish I would have done? I wish I would have had him some boxes and paper and let him tinker, because that's what he wanted to do, and just cut, tape, do whatever, to make him feel like he was participating, and maybe even wrap up some knowing, okay, this one's going to get unopened. And that would have saved that frustration. And I kind of look at it, and every time I refer to them like at what stage they may be at, like more like a toddler. I'm not doing that in any way, in a condescending way. But the reality is, we know they go through the developmental stages in reverse. So depending on where your person is, kind of gauge what they can do at Christmas around that. If they're in the earlier stages and they're more like a teenager, kind of a defiant teenager who doesn't have safety awareness or delay of gratification, just shift your perspective to, okay, this is how I have to respond. And then, like the instance with my dad, his behavior was more like a 3 or 4 year old. Now with my mom, her last Christmas, she really wanted to bake, but she could not. She couldn't measure. She couldn't really stir. And so with her, I kind of had lived and learned by the time I was caring for her. I set her up all kinds of little inexpensive, different flour, sugar, things that she would bake with, some eggs. I made her a little work center with a bowl, and just let her crack eggs, do whatever. Like you would your daughter when she was small. Okay, here's your little play kitchen set. You have fun, and then you can stir. I helped her use the blender, knowing that nothing she was doing was going to be edible. But I was doing my own thing, and it made her feel like we were doing it all together. So just a couple ideas there, trying to keep them involved as much as possible. But I think for most of us, when we look back at past Christmases and what we enjoyed, this is a no-brainer. It's not the gifts, it's not necessarily the dinners and all of that, but it's just simple traditions and being fully present with people that we love and care for. And we can certainly still accomplish all of that if we keep it shorter, smaller, and simpler. Okay, so that as caregivers, that needs to be your motto. And one thing that I always keep in mind, and I think it's sometimes easier than others, but we need to remember who they were while honoring who they are. So just shift your expectations of them. It's going to save you a lot of stress. I know we still have to be patient. We still have to stay the course. But know that I am wishing each and every one of y'all a very Merry Christmas. And if y'all have suggestions for future videos, if you have concerns, especially if you live in Union County, please reach out to me. The contact information is in the description. And if I don't have the answer or if I'm not in your area, I will certainly try to get you to the right place. With that, y'all have a happy holidays.